Hello, everybody. Anthony Metivier here from magneticmemorymethod.com. Once upon a time, I was on the weirdest roller coaster you can ever imagine, feeling amazing sometimes for no apparent reason, and then feeling horrible for long stretches of time, also for no apparent reason. And it was so bad, I one time had to spend 3 months in a hospital. Now, there maybe were some things going on that didn't have anything to do with what the doctors thought was going on, but nonetheless, that's what happened. And during that time, there was something really, really strange that happened, and they showed on the television in the day room the news. And on the news, there were two kids who had the strange idea in their minds that they would go into their school and they would shoot everybody. And I thought this was the most sadistic thing they could be showing on the television in a mental hospital. And I went to the nurse station and I said, "You have to turn this off. This is madness to be showing something like this on television," because it was deeply, deeply disturbing to me. And one of the reasons that it's so disturbing is, or at that time, was because I was in a disturbed state. And one of the things that I think I could do to help a lot of people that are in similar situations is to share how I got out of those disturbing mindsets, because I had a lot of mental intrusions, a lot of weird impulses, and memory training helped a great deal. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing in the chat. Help test that the chat is working, that you can hear. And let's have a great session today. These strategies reduced so much pain, so much suffering, and increased so much focus. And that weird roller coaster ride of feeling good and then feeling terrible ultimately was able to resolve itself and ease itself. Now, it wasn't memory training on its own, but this was a huge part of it and was ultimately the portal to getting this stability going. Because when it comes to things about sleep, when it comes to things about diet, when it comes to things about physical fitness, if you can memorize that information, then you can much more easily dive in and implement consistently. So I'll share with you a technique for you to be able to implement consistently using memory palaces to do it. And it'll really, really help you out. So if you're just joining us again, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And thank you, Randy, for being here from San Jose, California. Excellent to see you. Thanks for joining us. The Grand Fire Expert. That's a great name. Hey, Anthony, do we have a limit to the info we can add to one peg in our memory palace? There might be. And we can talk about that. Let's think about this in the context of what we're going to talk about a little bit later. Because when we think about our to-do lists, for example, there may be a limit to the amount of things that we can use. But I like that you're thinking about the peg here in a memory palace, because in many ways, that's exactly what a magnetic station is in a memory palace. It is a peg. Thank you for that question. Let's dive into it deeper when we get to this part of the presentation. But if you're joining us, again, hit the thumbs up. Or if you're watching the replay, hit that thumbs up and let me know in the discussion afterwards how things are going for you, etc. So what is the main problem that I had, and which I think many, many people have, is recurring thoughts, right? And this used to just drive me insane, especially because that it's just the same thought going over and over and over and over and over again. And why shouldn't a reasonably intelligent individual be able to just turn it off, right? And I remember coming up with some fancy tricks here and there. Wow, look at this. Coming up with these fancy tricks because I had studied a little bit of hypnosis at the time, well, more than a little bit, quite a lot of it. Hypnosis, self-hypnosis, NLP, etc. And in NLP, one of these ideas that they have there is that you imagine your mind as like a giant stereo or a record player or a radio or whatever, and you take the volume of the thoughts and you imagine yourself turning down the volume. And that's actually a little bit helpful and useful. So you can give it a try. But I always found that it was one of these bizarre auto radio images because it would just turn itself back up like very shortly after. So these I always came to think of as lexical earworms. So they weren't earworms in the sense of repeating music, which is something I also had very, very bad problems with. Just music repeating itself again and again and again and again. It's like a nightmare because you can't turn it off, right? But then it would be thoughts, really, really strange thoughts too sometimes. And that was a problem. So I'll share today how I used a memory palace to help with getting rid of that. And if you have suffered anything like that, I think that, obviously this may not be the magic bullet that helps you, but I think it's something that you can add. Obviously, go see a doctor. And on situations like what happened yesterday, if you have any thoughts like what happened there, go and get help because that doesn't need to happen. The other thing that I had was really destructive physical impulses. Now, you may have heard of something called harm OCD, and that can have a whole range of different symptoms and so forth. These, unfortunately, I had to deal with and managed to really get that junk out of my life. And these techniques we're going to talk about today have really helped a lot. Now, the next thing, it seems like it's just the same as recurring thoughts, but I don't think it is the same thing. I think it's very different, and that is uncomfortable memories just coming up. Now, why do I think that they're different? One reason is that a recurring thought is not necessarily a memory, right? It can be a unique thought that just keeps coming to mind, and in sentences, in words, some kind of hebephrenic display of like the alphabet. I used to be quite obsessed with the alphabet and would think all the time about how that the letter A was really just 3 lines of the 1, right? And the 1 was actually everything needed to construct the alphabet. But hold on, the 1 actually needed to wrap itself around itself to become a 0, right? So the whole alphabet is actually just a binary structure of 1 and 0. And I would just have these thoughts all the time about the alphabet being a collection of 1s and 0s, and it was just bizarre, and it wouldn't stop. And then I would think about pigeons, and I'd sit in the park and watch pigeons, and I would think about how the beaks of the pigeons were just, these 2 lines coming together, and it was just on and on and on. Now, that's different than uncomfortable memories, right? So thanks for being here, Daniel. Thanks for being here, Ahmad. Great to see you both, and let me know if you're joining us, and hit that thumbs up. And maybe you've had similar situations, but this is really, really distressing when I was a graduate student, and even earlier, the years leading up to that, because I'm trying to focus on what I'm doing, trying to be able to pay attention to Proust or Foucault or whatever it is that I was studying at university. And here I am reading in a park, and all I can think about is the alphabet and how it combines itself together and unwinds itself together and so forth. Or I'd have these memories just coming again and again and again and again. So they're quite different. And the memories would range from just weird things that shouldn't bother you, or shouldn't have bothered me, but they did. And part of the reason why they bothered me is because they would have some sort of embarrassing element to them, which would bring back that feeling of embarrassment in the past, or they would just be unwanted at that time. And it just kept coming again and again and again and again. So a typical example is, I remember in grade 2, I had done a show and tell presentation, and I was singing a song for whatever reason, and I was embarrassed that I even sang a song, and then this embarrassment would come back. And it's just totally irrational that I felt uncomfortable at the time, and then it is even more irrational that I felt embarrassed having this uncomfortable memory of a previous embarrassment. So it's kind of very, very strange, and these memories have a number of components, because they have an auditory component, they have that physical kinesthetic component of actually feeling ashamed, and so forth. So this would just come again and again and again. So some of the things that I found that were really, really effective against these three kinds of problems, and there are certainly more, was memorized mantras. So what is a mantra, first of all? It's very, very helpful to think about what that is, because it doesn't have to be a spiritual thing. It doesn't have to be anything like that. But since that it often is used in that context, let's think about that definition first in terms of Sanskrit, right? So, and Sanskrit itself is not necessarily a spiritual thing. Sanskrit is largely related to the science of consciousness and gives you tools for analyzing your consciousness, which is probably why so many people for thousands of years have memorized so much of it, because it helps you peer into your consciousness and pick it apart, analyze it, and reduce its impact on you. So the first part of the word mantra is this word man, which is to think, right? And then the next part is tra, which is instrumental. Okay? So it is an instrument of thinking. That's what a mantra is. It's not meant to chase away thoughts. It is a means, I think, of actually using thought to dispel thoughts. It's an instrument of dispelling thoughts. Dog is here. Thanks for saying hello, Dog, and you're very welcome. Thanks for being here and for saying hello. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up, get involved in the discussion, or if you're watching the replay, let us know in the discussion where you're at and what's going on with you these days. So this book here, Sacred Sanskrit Words, has a whole section on mantra. We won't read the whole thing, but it says here, from the verb man, to think, and tra, meaning instrumental. The mantra is a word, phrase, or hymn with sacred or spiritual resonance, significance, or value, that which brings thoughts together. So the literal meaning is instrument of thought, and this suggests that a mantra is a vehicle by which higher consciousness is manifest, a means by which we become harmonious with the world. And I think that that's not a bad definition. And this idea of becoming harmonious with the world is very, very important when you have the problems that we talked about. So the intrusive thoughts, the intrusive physical behavioral impulses, and the intrusive memories that are unwanted, right? If you have a tool, an instrument of thought that makes you be more harmonious with the world, wouldn't that be cool? If you just had something you could go to immediately that would make you more harmonious with everything. Even if you can't get rid of it, you then come into harmony with it through memory, right? So one of the things that has helped me immensely is memorizing particular material from the Ribhu Gita. And there's particular reasons why I think it works that are perfectly logical. And we'll dive into this a little bit. So Evolving Beyond Thought by Gary Weber has selected recommended extracts from the Ribhu Gita. And really the first one, even if you just memorize one out of the 32 extracts, I've memorized them all and have recited them with my eyes closed on a live stream, and you can go back and watch that replay if you want. But the first one is Chittameva Mahadosham, Chittameva Hi Balakaha, Chittameva Mahatmayam, Chittameva Mahanasat. And what that's saying in Sanskrit is basically that your thoughts are like a wild little boy, going crazy. And it's just really, really powerful the way that Gary Weber in this book sort of reframes it into a self-inquiry question, which is basically, how do my thoughts behave, right? And are they useful, right? What use are these thoughts? And so when the mind is going crazy and it's out of harmony with the world, if you just have this simple thing to say, right? And I think that it's important that it's in another language, right? Because that's part of a pattern interrupt. You have focus on the other language, and you have focus on the meaning of what that's saying to you in your mother tongue. And it just interrupts on two levels at the same time. So 2 levels of pattern interrupt. Chittameva Mahadosham, Chittameva Hi Balakaha, Chittameva Mahatmayam, Chittameva Mahanasat. How do my thoughts behave? Are they useful? It's so powerful. It's so powerful. And what it does also is it prompts you to give an answer to the question. Well, actually, no, these thoughts, they're not useful at all. And this helps to dispel them and it brings you into harmony with better thoughts, which is the question, right? The question is a better thought. And so we need to ask very, very good and profound questions. And I really, to just sum it up, I'd say that deep transformational work occurs when practice leads to knowledge and when knowledge guides your practice, right? So Ali is here. Good to see you, Ali. Says, great thing listening to you. A good start with my Monday mantra. Excellent, excellent. By the way, if you all don't know, Ali edits our videos. She's an amazing editor. And Ali, if you haven't seen, on part 2 of our Mind Palace Secrets playlist, there was some nice compliments for the production value there. So go and check that out. Great to see you here today. Sean is here from New Jersey. Good to see you, Sean. Zeus is here from Botswana. Wow, excellent. Amazing. Good to see someone from Botswana. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, how things are going, and if this makes sense to you, right? So why I think this works is because if you've memorized this, the actual meaning of our thinking tool, our thought tool, it will do 2 levels of pattern interrupt, and it will bring you into harmony with better thoughts, right? That dispel the negative thought. That's very, very important. And this I found profoundly useful from the get-go, right? Because I didn't memorize all 32 passages in a day. But this is, maybe it's primacy effect. It's still my favorite of them all and one of the most powerful. But if you memorize it yourself, which I highly recommend that you do, and incidentally, if you do, then you can go and watch that previous replay where I'm reciting the whole thing, and you can read along and go, "Ooh, yeah, there, he's got it." But this matter of knowledge and practice and knowledge and so forth, it's made very, very clear in another piece that I've been memorizing from Adi Shankaracharya's the Atmabodha, which in this book is, the title of the book is The Fire of Self-Knowledge. It's both a translation and a commentary on the Atmabodha. And one of the things that he says there is, just as chopping wood is the indirect and fire is the direct cause of cooking, spiritual practice is the indirect cause, and knowledge or self-knowledge the direct cause of liberation. That's what it should be here. Let's have a look. Just as chopping wood is the indirect cause and fire the direct cause of cooking, spiritual practice is the indirect cause and self-knowledge is the direct cause of liberation. Right. And so what that's saying basically is that you can practice all that you want, but if it isn't based on the knowledge, right, then that practice, it's not going to quite get you there. That said, once you have the knowledge, it will help you guide your practice. At least that's what I think. And that's been my experience. So I would highly recommend that you read the Atmabodha and read the Ribhu Gita and start to memorize something. Now, it doesn't have to be these mantras. No, not necessarily. You could look at the Heart Sutra. You could look at all kinds of other texts. I'm also, have memorized the Upadesa Saram, which is very, very powerful. But again, 2 levels of pattern interrupt. I think that's part of the key here. And focusing on not just the practice of doing it, but the knowledge, and then allowing that knowledge to help guide your practice and doing it from memory. And this can really, really disrupt intrusive thoughts instantly. And you just have to train yourself to do it. What's the best way to train? Well, we're going to talk about this today, but you can also just understand immediately that the best way to do this is every day. And I haven't missed a day in 2.5 years of reciting everything that I've memorized. And it has been profoundly transformative. But understand, the reason why it's profoundly transformative is not the practice in and of itself. It's the knowledge of what it is that I'm practicing, okay? And what is exactly that knowledge? Well, it's the knowledge, as they say here, of the self, right? The self being a way of describing the essential oneness of all that is going on. Now, there's a lot of traps there we don't need to get into right now because I don't actually totally agree with some of the assessments of what exactly oneness should be or could be or can be or is or whatever. But it doesn't matter. You don't have to agree, because the great tradition here is primarily a scientific one, and it is one that actually doesn't want you to take anything on faith. None of it is to be taken on faith. And that's what makes this Sanskrit tradition that I study, also known as Advaita Vedanta, so precious and powerful, is it doesn't want your faith. It wants your skepticism, and it wants you to use self-inquiry, questions, to find out what is true for you. What is true for will almost certainly be true for others. But it's like the perfect Batman tool belt. And you just load up, memorize all these powerful, powerful statements and questions that disrupt the garbage of everyday life, the intrusions of everyday life, and give you better logical things to think. And those thoughts are liberation. They liberate you from the wild, untrained mind that just leaps all over the place like a frog, as it is described in the Mandukya Upanishad, which I'm pretty sure Manduka means frog, and jumping around like a frog. All right, let's check in with our chat here. Kadisha is here from Bolivia. Good to see you, Kadisha. Sanku is here from India. Namaste, Sanku. Ahmed is here from Yemen but lives in Germany. Wow, so Guten Tag, Guten Abend, or whatever time it is there in Berlin, or Germany, better said. Whereabouts in Germany are you? Daniel says, memorizing the 100-syllable mantra is something that I've been working on for a while. Excellent, excellent. That sounds good. I have not heard of the 100-syllable mantra, but it sounds wonderful. And powerful, powerful tool. So if you're struggling with anything like this, I highly, highly recommend that you pick something and you memorize it, and then you commit to reciting it for the long haul, for a period of time. And the reason why I think it works is very, very clear. It's just going to give you a couple levels of pattern interrupt, and then give you something better to think about. And when you pick a very good, high-quality mantra, one that really focuses your attention on the uselessness of that previous thought, such as this first one from the Ribhu Gita that Gary Weber puts together in Evolving Beyond Thought, well, then it's a win-win, because it's getting you to focus on the nature of thought itself and its illusory nature, right? And how fast and fleeting it is, and how pointless and useless it is. And then you just focus more on the individual moment. And the more you memorize of the Ribhu Gita, the more it helps train your brain to do this. Because the next thought is, what is the value of your thoughts, etc. And that's a very powerful question, right? Well, do my thoughts have value? Sometimes yes, but usually no, right? And so I found a lot of mental quiet comes from this. Profound mental quiet, actually. So I wish you the best with that, and just start to memorize these things. Very, very powerful. But, take care in what you memorize, because there's a lot of woo-woo and la-di-da stuff that will not be helpful. But these will. I think if you follow these recommendations, I found them very, very good. And why I find them good from Gary Weber, and also this Atma Bodha translation from James Swartz, is that they're not asking you to have anything on faith. This is coming from the purest and proper skeptical nature of the science of self-consciousness, or the science of consciousness, or however you want to frame this in Advaita Vedanta, that doesn't want your beliefs. It doesn't want to tell you how to live your life. It doesn't care how you live your life. All it cares about is, can you use self-inquiry to stop suffering and be liberated from suffering through mental processes, mental tools. Very powerful. All right, so carrying on with solution number 2. Having good memories organized in a, shall we say, happy days memory palace. Now this can be a bit of a trick if you don't have any happy memories, but there's a solution for that. And I'm sure that most people have at least some happy memories to work with. Now, if you would like some of the scientific evidence behind doing this, then I suggest you check out the Memory Palace versus Depression replay. The link for that is down below. And what we did is we went through Tim Dalglish's research on using Method of Loci, and it's very, very compelling, and it's very easy to do. And so you can go through that, but very briefly, what you want to do is create a memory palace. And in the research, as I recall it, they were using a lot of outdoor memory palaces. My preference is to use an indoor memory palace. And then you load it up with positive memories. And I believe what they were doing there was between 7 to 12 positive memories. I'd say you could go even as low as 4. And then what you want to do is not just load it up with positive memories, but you want to memorize the actual memories in a particular order, right? And then you want to use recall rehearsal to get those positive memories so they're as strong as possible and you have access to them like that, right? And so when on that previous live stream, we went through a number of positive memories. Different people shared some of their positive memories, so you can read some of those. I went through some of mine, and it's very, very good when sad times come and tough times come and a little bit of feeling of depression maybe comes. Instead of going, man, I feel depressed, boom, you go into the memory palace, and not only do you have one positive memory to replace that present negative thought or that negative impulse that's coming up, but you've got a dozen of them. Right? You got multiple ones, and you just move through your memory palace and revisit them. And one of the things that you can do, I don't know if it'll work for you or not, but it's helped me in the past and well worth experimenting with, is to test this with kinesthetic anchoring. So what that means, and this is maybe Pavlovian conditioning, I'm not sure how it works or even if it works for others, but it has helped me and worked very well for me, is let's say you've got a memory palace and you've got it with 4 memories. Each corner has a powerful positive memory, right? And so I would think of the day that I graduated my PhD. This was huge. Even though it was a dramatic day, and some of those people on my committee put me through the ringer, and it wasn't in the most positive sense. The actual accomplishment, bam! First time they call me Dr. Metivier, bam, right? So this is a great positive memory. And I remember, too, that we went downstairs into a pub underneath Winters College. The actual exam was in Vanya College, but they're connected in this weird way at York University. We went down to Absinthe, which I don't even think exists anymore. And I did magic tricks for everybody. So my actual positive memory after completing the dissertation defense was doing magic tricks for everyone. I'm not even sure how I had the energy or the mood to do it, but there I was. Bam, 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 pick a card, any card, whatever is coming out of my pockets, etc. The whole 9 yards. That's my first positive memory here in this memory palace. And then to do the kinesthetic anchoring, when you feel really, really happy, and I'm feeling that happy, joyous memory right now, you press like your 2 fingers together, or I like to press a spot on my leg, and you just really anchor that good feeling. And then later, and again, you have to experiment with this, see if it works for you. I don't know if it'll work for you, but it's a Pavlovian conditioning kind of thing, or kinesthetic anchoring. Then later, when you want to feel great, you just press that point on your leg or like this and see if you can just instantly access that feeling. Try it, see, and give it a real good try. And the trick to it is really making sure you're really in that state and mentally connecting to that feeling and willfully saying, I'm going to link this to pressing my leg. And that can help. I don't do it at all anymore, but when I did it, it seemed to have a good thing. Maybe it's a little self-delusion, but the problem is if it works, not really deluding anyone. The thing is does it work for long, right? And that's what we want to get out of. We don't want to get out of things that are temporary fixes. We want long-term, if not permanent, solutions. So back to solution number 1, memorize the mental tools that give you the knowledge that improve everything, because the knowledge is the most sturdy thing that you have, right? And so really what that knowledge is going to come through your practice when you feel it. And there's a lot of reasons to believe that what these practices are doing is moving you from this part of the brain more to this part of the brain, right? So this is the default mode network, I oriented kind of thinking, and then the task positive network is more in the zone. And I think that that's part of the secret as well. So whether or not this gets you into that task positive network or the zone or in flow or not, as Mihai Csikszentmihalyi would say, I'm not sure. But I know that for me, this has always been very, very temporary, which is why I ultimately abandoned it. But it's something to play around with. Now, the next important thing here is to always create new positive memory palaces as new great experiences arise, right? So we had a great experience over the weekend. We went to see a wonderful Taiwanese movie, which is Cui Hao de Shiguan. And they were calling it in English 3 times, but probably the translation would be something more along the lines of the best of times or something like that. And it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. And there's a couple of scenes in particular that were just mind blown in terms of, the mise en scène and kinesthetic feelings that come from particular ways that were framed, and just some conceptual ideas as well. So, for example, in the movie, the pool table is used to great effect to give a metaphor of the randomness of life, and then later that metaphor is sort of transposed or juxtaposed with the randomness of text messages and so forth. And anyway, so I think of those really wonderful revelations on different levels, emotional levels, the music, auditory levels in the movie and so forth. And the whole theater becomes a memory palace to revisit this as a new positive memory. Just wonderful, wonderful. And so you keep on doing this, ongoing positive memories, put them in a memory palace, or turn the place, as I'm suggesting now, into a positive memory palace and go back to it. And then I can add other positive memories there for forever, right? Because it's a movie theater. It's got all kinds of seats, and each seat can be a station in a memory palace. And here you go. Plan great experiences and plan in advance to make them a memory palace and encode the great things that happen there in that memory palace. Planning is amazing, what it can do for you. And not enough people plan great experiences with the plan of turning them into powerful, happy days memory palaces. All right. So there you go. There are some strategies for you there. And we have another solution coming, but let's check in with our chat. Tina is here from Ontario. Just finished the free course. Truly loved it. Truly enjoyed it. Thank you. Well, you're welcome, Tina. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking that course. Really appreciate you doing so, and I hope that it helped you out. Okay, let's see here. Going to just refresh my water here. If you're just joining us, let me know where you are in the chat, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Hit that thumbs up. And wow. What a day. What a day. I love this. Batman. All right. So Daniel says, can't share the link in the chat, but a search for 100-syllable mantra will yield excellent results. Okay, great. So thank you, Daniel. Look that up. Bella Beast TV is in the memory palace. All right. How do you go about remembering what you read? Do you create images for certain points to the book, like the example you were giving about the movie? Do you try to memorize as you watch the movie, read a book, etc.? Well, I never try, because you don't need to try. And then that's not to play Yoda here. But great question, by the way. Thanks for being here. There's a number of ways to tackle your question. And let's start with the most powerful. The number one way to go about remembering what you read is to make sure that you know how to use memory palaces and that you're prepared with a number of memory palaces in advance so that you're able to actually encode, right? And what you'll learn if you haven't taken the free course is how to do that, right? Then deeper into this realm, there's the preparation and predetermination process so that you have memory palaces that are linked to individual books that you're reading or authors, etc. And there's a number of ins and outs to that, and they're all based on the rules of association. And those rules of association have to do with a number of things. phonetic association, lexical association. I know those are big, fat, fancy words, but they're good. I like them. I mean, what the heck are we doing with memory palaces if we're not going to learn the big, fat, fancy words, right? A lot of people say, oh, don't use big words. It scares people. Well, if they're that scared, I don't know what the solution is other than memory techniques. You shouldn't be scared of words. There's a lot to be said for memorizing and increasing your vocabulary. One of the things that I've been reading recently, almost done, is a reread of Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. He's like very pro vocabulary, right? He's like, look at these people who have these big vocabularies, how they have way more mental tools than those who don't, to create bigger pictures in their minds that connect with other bigger pictures that other big people have in their minds. So don't go running and screaming from big vocabulary. Embrace it, learn it, memorize it. Very powerful. And so to be able to do that, of course, you want to be able to have the tools. The best tool I know is a memory palace with the ability to memorize vocabulary through multiple levels of association. And those levels of association are really going to allow you to weave the space together with imagery that is very, very condensed and packed to trigger off your memory of the target information, right? So when I do something like this, and I'm saying, well, okay, I am composing this treatise on self-knowledge for those who are purified and peaceful, calm of mind, free of craving, and desirous of liberation, right? What I'm doing there is exactly what I just said. I'm visiting a memory palace, and each word, or maybe not every single word, has an image there. And so when I think about, I am composing this treatise on self-knowledge, there's a compost bin there, right? Because compost bin sounds like composing. If I had not had that, I might say I am writing this treatise, right? But I want to be able to do it correctly, so I need to have an image that has a one-to-one correspondence or a near correspondence. It's not actually a one-to-one correspondence. And go from there. It's pretty simple at the end of the day, but there's a lot of ins and outs, and those ins and outs are not necessarily simple to get. And the problem with a lot of memory trainings is they don't believe that you have the wherewithal to do it, so they simplify it and Mickey Mouse it, and then you never get there because they just don't, or they aren't straight up about the actual tools that are needed there. So you got to find some good memory training that actually believes in your capacity to handle the way the techniques actually work instead of Mickey Mousing them, which makes me want to. All right. So Candle is here from New York City. Wonderful, wonderful. I like New York. Lots of memory palaces there. Bella B says, what I did recently after learning the memory palace was to create an image in the palace for certain parts of the book I found interesting. But in this case, I had to stop for a bit to create it. Well, you will in the beginning. But here's where you can get to. I'm not sure if you get there immediately or not, but you can just turn the book into a memory palace. And one thing that I like to do is I have a 00 to 99, so I will turn the pages into mini memory palaces based on the actual page number. Now, in this case, I'm not doing that because all of the verses are actually numbered, right? So I just recited number 1 earlier today. I recited number 2. I know that it's 1 and 2 for 2 reasons. One is that they're in that order, and then because the station is encoded that way. But if you're just, if you're not, it depends on your strategy. So at the end of the day, start from the level of strategy, predetermination, and preparation, and then figure out what's going to work best for your goals, your specific goals with that book, and then use that strategy. But if you're worried about stopping to make the images, don't think that ever goes away. There's no such thing as instant, encoding. Encoding is always stopping and pausing. If anyone's telling you otherwise, they're jerking your chain. That's what encoding is. And it's not bad. It's not wrong. It's absolutely critical, and it's what you want to do. All the speed reading la-di-da nonsense that says, oh yeah, you have photographic reading. Nonsense. That's not even desirable, for one thing. It's a ridiculously pathetic metaphor for what true memory, knowledge-based memory is. And you don't even want it. Reading is reading. It is part of reading is stopping, pausing, reflecting, memorizing, right? Jiggling it around in your head, swirling it around, tasting it like fine wine. That's what this is all about. This is so much nonsense out there. You shouldn't be avoiding stopping to create your imagery. You must, and you always will. And there's nothing wrong with it. It is, in fact, very powerful to do so. And highly desirable to do so. Reading and remembering always involves pausing and reflecting and connecting. There's no way around it. Don't even try to avoid it. It's not desirable to do so. I could just repeat myself again and again and again because this is the way that it works. So stopping for a bit to create it. Here's the thing. If you do things the way that I suggest, then you're going to be able to actually refine that whole process and stop less while reading so you can focus on memorizing more later, right? And it's a good process. A lot of people have really enjoyed it. If you look on our testimonials page, you'll see that it actually has further implications. Timo Han, he put a testimonial recently, and amazing what he's been doing with the strategy for memorizing directly from books to actually do business better with his clients. Amazing. All right, Bella says, thank you. Your explanation is helping a lot, and the image didn't go away. Amazing. It is amazing. It is amazing. And you ask here, when you read, do you pick parts from the book you want to remember, or do you experience to get the whole book? I don't. The only time that I memorize entire books is like things like this, but I'm not memorizing the commentary, just the actual text of the Atma Bodha. Likewise here, I've just memorized the Sanskrit and English meaning, but not all the commentary, because the commentary, basically, you just figure out. You remember it because you know the actual core knowledge. So one of the problems that a lot of people have is they don't focus on preparation and predetermination. They don't have a strategy, a larger strategy. So I suggest you watch the last week's replay and the replay on creating a memory vision statement, and you really focus on the high order, high level strategy and get that stuff sorted out, and then learn the techniques and have those techniques embedded within a proper effective strategy. And then what you do is you just keep taking it one sip at a time. You study these techniques, you learn new things, you implement what you learned from your study, and then you practice it with information that improves your life. So SIP, study, implement, and practice. Very powerful. All right, everybody. So we've gone through 2 solutions for dealing with intrusive thoughts. Would you like the third? Let me know in the chat as I get a drink of water here if you're interested in carrying forward. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And this is such an important topic to be able to clear your mind of intrusive thoughts, clear your body of any itching and weird impulses to move around. I used to have this thing where my leg would be like bounce, 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 bounce. I remember during university going to see the play Uncle Vanya and being so irritated and agitated and filled with this impulse to just jump up and scream in the theater. And that used to happen a lot. And I wish that I had mental tools for dealing with that back then. But the only tool that I had was to punish myself, essentially, and worry about what the heck is so wrong with me the whole time, and restrain it, and put my hands in my pockets and sit on my hands and bite my lip and all kinds of weird stuff. I really didn't get very much enjoyment out of that play at all. And I did have some tools for relaxing myself and so forth, but I didn't know how to stop it. And so now I have these tools that basically get rid of that stuff instantly, and it doesn't even really arise anymore, but the odd time that it does, these are the tools that we're talking about. And so we have no interest whatsoever in the chat. What are you guys, asleep at the wheel or what? You're all driving? Let me know in the chat how you're doing, what's going on with you today, and if we shall continue. Let me know. Let me see here. Now, one of the things that I've done is started to write a lot about these experiences. And so I'm hoping that that will help people out a great deal to see some of that, those who are suffering from this in any way whatsoever. But if they're not, then I imagine that would be all very, very boring for them to go through. Another little thing that's come into my mind is that breathing is an important technique as well. So if you don't know much about breathing, it's one of the most fundamental skills for mental control I can think of. Mr. Pigeon is a Quebecois living in China. Well, ni hao. Ni zhi le ma. Let's see. Christian is in Brazil. Wonderful. Good to have you here. Thanks for being here. And Mr. Pigeon asks, how much NLP techniques do you incorporate in your practice? Well, what can I say? There's kind of a disagreement to what exactly belongs to NLP and what doesn't. As you know, a lot of people, and I think this is a pretty good thing at the end of the day, they don't really quite think that NLP or hypnosis or any of that stuff actually exists. And the whole idea of programming, really? Are humans programmable? We're not computers. So that's quite questionable. But in terms of everyday sort of use, I would say I just don't use much of it at all, and anything that is useful or usable is not exclusively owned or coming from NLP. So yeah, I think of Kreskin. Kreskin had a great line, which is that all hypnosis is the acceptance of a suggestion, right? And I think that's a very wise way of putting it. So I would consider that. I would consider thinking through, to what extent there actually is any such thing as NLP. But anchoring, again, something I have used. I think it's very temporary, very short-lived, and I don't think minds are programmed. I think that what we are after is actually scrubbing out residual patterns and behaviors that are not so much programmed as they are encoded. And I think that's very, very different. And we can clean them out with some of the tools that we've already talked about today, and plan great experiences for the future, and then actually show up to those great experiences. All right, so solution number 3 for you all, even though I haven't really heard anything. The Cricket Crew. No, that's cruel. The Cruel Cricket Crew. All right. Number 3 is to turn your home into a morning ritual memory palace. How would you do this? Well, one of the things that you can do is actually turn your space into a memory palace that reminds you of your commitment to complete certain rituals that cleanse your mind, right? So let's check in with the chat here. David says, enjoying another live broadcast from MMM and Dr. Metivier from Gainesville, Florida, USA. Excellent. Thanks for being here. David's here, says the topic is very relevant to him. Thank you for being here, David. Thanks for saying hello. I have to laugh as not pleasant as it is, this spontaneous cricket crew. I like that. But it's the 80-20 rule. I love the 80-20 rule, seeing it play out and how pervasive it is. But I'm glad that this is of relevance to you, David, and thanks for being here, both Davids, David Wall and and David Petrosius. Love these names, actually. So how would you turn your home into a morning ritual memory palace? I can only share how that I did this. And one way that I still do to this day, even though I have had many different floors throughout my life, is to start with the floor. And so that's what one of my floors looked like. A little bit untidy, but to make sure that I was spending time on Chinese every single morning, you can't miss it when it's right beside your bed, right? And so when I had very limited time to pick up as much Chinese as I could before heading on over there, when I was invited to give a presentation, and we did a 3-day seminar on memory techniques in Guilin, China. Before that I did that, I wanted to get as much Chinese into my head as possible with no particular interest in Chinese actually at the time. And basically that was the first thing, was to remind myself of that goal, and got it done and was able to have a great old time in China. And even though it wasn't going there to be tested in Chinese or anything, they whipped me in front of a little teacher to test where I was at, and bang presto, they were quite happy with that. And then of course the epic story where I was able to sit right across from my father-in-law and ask for permission to marry his daughter in Mandarin. That was quite something after really less than 3 months of study of the language. So I had a lot of fun with that, and really great brain exercise, actually, Chinese. So if you're not learning it, learn it. And if you know another language, I highly recommend that you do what I did, which is you'll notice that Chinese textbook there doesn't say Chinese, it says Chinesisch, and that's because I learned Chinese in German. So if you can do that, Benny Lewis refers to that as laddering, and I highly recommend laddering because it lets you focus on 2 languages at once and not de-skill yourself from the other language. So that's very, very powerful. All right, so what you want to do, or what you want to try and explore, and this really helped me a lot, was an if this then that habit chain. And so there's usually 5 things in the habit chain. And so basically, if you do this, then you do that. If you don't do this, then you don't do that. And it's, it takes a little bit of practice to get into it, but you need to think about a chain of habits that you can get going for yourself first thing in the morning, and then actually have them visible in front of you and encoded in your mind throughout the home in your memory palace, so that if you wake up, you study Chinese. And you don't go anywhere else until you've opened that book and you study it, if Chinese is the first thing. Then, if you study Chinese, then you meditate. It can be the other way around, whatever. It's not really that, you're going to do it the same way every day. I wouldn't put too many rules around it, but rather have a number of things, and just simply don't turn on the computer, don't look at a phone, don't have a phone anywhere nearby until you've done these things. So if wake up, Chinese, then meditate, then this, that, and the other thing. So very, very powerful and really easy to establish if you put it physically in front of you. All this stuff people learning in apps and stuff, I don't know. If you do it, great. You have more discipline than I do, and I congratulate you. But then you have to battle against digital amnesia, which can be a huge problem. And you don't want to spend time on things you're going to forget because of the digital amnesia problem. So I would consider very, very much having it physically in front of you. But work on progression, not perfection. So if 5 habits in a row sounds like too much for you, just start with 1, start with 2, start with 3, etc. You want to progress towards better, not perfection. There's no perfection. As I often like to point out, perfectionists aren't even good at being perfectionists. So good luck to them. And here's something else that I highly, highly recommend that you get. Get it into your head and do it. 90 days. Pick some kind of habit that you're going to stick with for 90 days, make it visible in front of yourself, and do not stray from 90 days. Why? Because the best science around habit formation does not say 30 days, does not say 29 days. It says around 90 days, right? And this totally makes sense in my experience because I got this and I put it into practice. And the book that I read about this was 59 Seconds by Richard Wiseman. And he's a very wise man, indeed. So read his books, not just that one, but any that you can get hold of. And this 90-day thing is very, very, very powerful and important. It will change everything for you. You've got to have that amount of time to build basically the networks in your brain. So the habit formation things. And then even then, it's not a promise that it's going to last forever after that. But I'm quite convinced that the 2.5 years that I've managed to go without breaking a day with meditation comes from and the particular form of meditation that we talked about earlier today, that's coming from having had previous experiences practicing the 90-day rule. So my first experience with the 90-day rule was in journals just like this, and it was writing out a vision statement again and again and again and again and again. And this is very, very powerful. And it takes some time before you filter out the BS stories that you're telling yourself. And then you start to actually create the vision statement of what you really actually want in life. But it's powerful and it becomes a habit. And then you're able to build the skill of building habits. So just get started with something. Go through the vision statement live stream if you haven't already. I'm very confident that if you do those things, you'll find your way to a bigger and better and more powerful vision statement. And one thing that will help you along the way is to journal everything. And I really do mean journal everything. So why? Well, it's because it gives you a couple of opportunities. For one thing, to unload trying to memorize everything. And, you can also mind map a lot of stuff. So I have this mind map here. And this is, I'm now shooting the videos of the new course that you see represented here, but I keep it right there because it helps offload my needing to remember, oh, that's the project. Yeah. That thing's not leaving here until that the project is done, right? It's just a neat little reminder. I don't have to memorize the to-do list. I see it all the time. And this is such a massive project, the new course, huge, unbelievably big. Not that it's going to be big to your eyes, but to put it all together is a massive undertaking. And it's right there. And I journal all the time, which is in one of these suckers. So this is a snapshot journal. Basically lets you have little snapshots of what's going on, what you did, how that you did, and so forth. And then you offload from your mind having to remember to do it and remember what you did and how you did it. Don't have, save the memory techniques for languages, save it for large learning projects. And then you look back and you go, wow, look at this consistency. And it gives you an instant dopamine spike because you can be proud of this chain, this unbroken chain of ongoing activity towards a goal. And remember that the definition really of intelligence at the end of the day is the ability to create and accomplish goals. At least that's my personal definition, and I think it's not a bad one. I think that's the one they use with rats too, in mazes, because we all certainly are like rats in mazes in our minds, or in some way. Pat says, hello from the Golden Triangle. I was given a mantra in Sanskrit meaning the wave of perfection merges in the ocean of perfection, yet that perfection is not lost. Given decades ago, but still remember. I like that. The wave of perfection merges in the ocean of perfection, yet that perfection is not lost. What I like about this too, right, is that, and I'm not a fan of the word perfection, but the interesting thing here with the wave is that what is the wave and what is the ocean, right? Is the fact that there is a wave mean that it's separate from the ocean? Not at all, right? It is the ocean. It will return and resolve to what it is, what it came from. The wave is the ocean. It is a manifestation of the ocean. And our thoughts, are like that. They're just a manifestation of the mind, and they will resolve back into the mind. Well, thank you, Crone Woman Walking, for the super chat. I don't know why it doesn't show your text there, but there's what you said. Hooray for the replay. Really appreciate that always. Good to see you. And I think absolutely the beautiful thing about that wave thing is helping us realize that everything is one in that sense. It's resolving back to one, resolving back to perhaps nothing at the same time. Christian had said here, best channel. Awesome. Carlos says, how frequently do you retrace your memory palace, and what do you do if a memory is not there because of poor palace design? Thanks for that question, Carlos. So let's break this up. How frequently do I retrace the memory palace? There's so many memory palaces. The frequency of going through them, what I suggest is that you use proper memory palace creation so that you don't have to go back and retrace them or revisit them with any frequency. That's not the goal. The goal is to create them properly in the first place and use the creation process so that they're golden from the get-go, right? As golden as the golden triangle that Pat is joining us from, right? And when you create it in the best possible manner, you don't have to go back and retrace it. Now, if a memory is not there, is it because of poor memory palace design, or is it because of poor magnetic imagery management? I don't know. It can be both. But what you do is you revisit the fundamentals, and then you practice the fundamentals, and you do some self-inquiry. Why is this not working? If you're journaling everything, then you'll have clues all the time.